Hey guys, it's H-Drive with a deck profile, surprisingly, with Vanguard. This is with the standard rotation. It is a Magnolia Deck Profile, which is probably doing pretty well in my good local tournaments, as well as even in like bigger scale tournaments, and it does pretty well against the meta of Avas and Chronojets. So I wanted to do a deck profile to get all along with it. So, it doesn't matter what kind of starter you have, as long as it's okay. I used Flag Grid because it was funny. And we're going to go with the 4 cards in your right line. Is Rancor to a Sylvan Beast Lattice to a Magnolia. Doesn't matter with Lattice if you have the previous run line or not. It's whenever Magnolia goes on top of it. You can Soul Blast 1 to call the top card of your top card of your deck to the board if it's a unit. If it's not, it goes to your hand. You will hit triggers, but at the same time, any other piece is just good. Rancor is Soul Blast 1 to draw 2 cards and discard an order, or discard 2 cards. But you don't really care about what you discard since you're kind of a greedy or focused deck. And Magnolia, of course, is a unit that says give a unit +5 and it can attack from the back row after this unit has attacked. So, this is going to be a little bit more different than this usual Magnolia deck because we're going to go with the grade 3s first. We're going to have the Persona Rights. So this version of the deck does not play Magnolia Elders because I think it is much more slower in the format of Chronojets and Avas. Also, I believe with all the new cards of this giving out 10,000 more power to more units, as I explain more, will also be more important. But if you do Persona Ride onto this, it gives 3 units plus 5 and it can attack from the back row, giving you a total of 6 attacks. Which in this deck, your numbers are not that low, so you get to deal with some big hands to players. Next up is going to be, of course, Inlet Pulse. This is also after the Elder, but I think Inlet Pulse at 3 is good enough, because any more in your hand, it can't guard, and then just gives you just enough soul to run away with, and 3 cards is enough to draw through. With the introduction with Dragon Mask Masquerade, the new set, we do have Seven Horn Beast Winnie the Pooh. This is a 13k unit that you can call if you have a grade 2 or greater Vanguard with Sylvan Beast Horn Beast. So it works with your right line as well, and then you can call it by just being 1 grade less. And if a Magnolia is placed onto the Vanguard server, it gains +10. So when you hit your grade 3, if you have him out, he's a 23k. And he's a 33k. Numbers are very big with this guy on the board. So he'll show up, come swinging through, and it's really good for there. And yeah, to the grade 2s. So we have 3 Patheros. It is basically a Squadron Hawk. When it's called, you may Soul Blast 1. You call 1 from the drop zone. This is spammable, as well as this gains 500 when you have a Magnolia Vanguard. It played more into Elder than this, but this is a good aggressive answer for you if you're going first. Outside of that, you also have the bear as well when you go first or second. It's a little bit more better, but this one gives you a little bit of a board as well as some guard value into that when you just call it to the front. We also have access to Silver Horn Beast Gladier or Godia. This is basically your copies of Inlet, which is when a Magnolia is placed on top, you may move it to your soul. If you do, your Vanguard gains 5k power, as well as it can attack from the back. When it's in the back row, it gains +10 when it attacks, and then if it's in the center column, it retires itself and you draw a card. Basically, this is a better Inlet because it gives your Vanguard power, as well as you are able to attack from the back row with a bigger power, and then if it's in your back, you draw 1. Doesn't kill itself unlike multiple copies of Inlet, but this is a much more bigger Inlet punching unit. And it's really good. And then, yay. So next up we have 2 Alphins. This is another good answer to big numbers if you have a wide board. Gains 5 for each grade 2 or higher unit on your board, and then if it's gained 10,000 power by this effect, you may bind it to countercharge and soul charge 1. This is really good if you're tight on resources. You don't really need to see more than 1 or 2 effects of it, just because it doesn't do the grade that you will eventually deck out with this deck. And The spicy weather techs are going to be M-Bar, which is a 8k unit, but it gains 5k power and shield if you have a Magnolia Vanguard when it enters the rearguard Overdress, and then attacks from the back row gains 8k, along with Gab Green, which is whenever a unit in the same color as this unit attacks, you can still blast 1. If you do, it gains plus 10,000 power, and target any number of units on your opponent's board for this unit's attack. You can't guard with those grades and numbers. So particularly because you're swinging with such big numbers, being able to force your opponent to guard with certain grades against this unit has won me more games. It has done a lot more work than it usually has, and it does that as well. This is extra shield, of course. This can always get changed for anything else. I just like the extra shield for this deck as well. So next up we have, of course, PGs. We do have a big order package in the Elementario, which I will show later. But PGs are PGs, they're very good. If you call them, they're good. If they don't, they're bad. And then next is a good play roller, the Scrolls. This allows your Persona Rise when you do Persona Ride. Affect your back row units as well. So basically your entire board gets plus 10,000. And then when it's placed from deck or from hand, you may still blast 1, look at the top 5, and add a Magnolia to hand. This card has done a lot of work. It shows that 6 attacks with plus 10,000 power is a lot of power. So this definitely throws hands, and it does great work with that. Next up is the order lineup for your Rain Core. So we're just going to go real quick. So we have 4 Wild Intelligences, as in this will mill you 3 for Counterblast, and you call 2 since you're on a Magnolia Vanguard, or Magnolia Grade 3 Vanguard. You call 2, but you can call 1 in just anything if you need that. 1 Elementario, because Elementario is a really good card, and it stops your Chrono Jet decks, as well as Grade 4 decks as well. And we do play the Galactus Gradle, which is when you place it, you may activate Persona Ride. So this allows your Magnolias and your Scrolls to be active, so you always guarantee at least a 6 attack. If you don't have that Magnolia, this is good enough as well. Next up is a total of 7 criticals. I play 4 effect crits, and then 1 of... I did 1 of each because I like to screw with my opponent. But it's going to be 7 critical altogether. 4 on the Atlantic, because if you do hit a trigger with your last scale, having this be able to clear itself and then bonus power is really good. Giving you the soul and clearing itself helps you a lot more in the later game. And then, because your Vanguard has now gained power, people obviously will try to not guard your Vanguard because it's usually the safest. Or even with a bigger power, they have to really do consider that. And then the crit also closes out the damage gap. Even though if you hit double triggers, it screws up your layer attacks. But adding that additional pressure does help out. Of course, we do play the 1 over trigger, as well as 2 fronts and 2 draws. So the reason why I went with this spread is draw triggers do help out getting to your big pieces, as well as giving you a little bit of guarding power defensively wise, since these are the effect ones that gain 5 if your opponent's a grade 3 or higher. And the fronts are really good if you're going with the very wide strategy in the front rows, as well as being a 20k shield. And then over trigger for Sorkea, not the Elemental Prey one, but makes sense because this is a standard format. And of course we have our heal triggers. I do play 2 vanilla heals. I do with the Kiwis, and then 2 of the higher grade heal triggers. Surprisingly, this has come up more in matchups like if you're going second and if you're playing against Chrono Jet, because it does get bigger shield value. So having this bound to the board is really good. Or having this in your hand when you're going second is probably really strong, even in the early game. And it does that. So basically, what the deck does is that when you do you're going to Persona right into Magnolia as many times as you can. So ideally, having this is really good. The reason why I'm not playing Elder is because I think having the very big numbers going at your opponent every turn does way more damage than anything else, as well as having this consistent board on the aggression side helps those who compete against most decks like Ava and Chronojet. Of course, this deck is not super perfect. You will end up having hands of like just triggers and all that as well. But it does work against most of the top tier decks. It does destroy their hands if they ever need to. And then against smaller tier decks as well, it will thrive pretty hard because you're gaining a lot of power onto it. But that is pretty much that. There will be a Decklog link to this if you want to see that visually. And yeah, hopefully I can get some new videos out and back onto the good old YouTube train again, hopefully. I did start something new, like a job, and then life stuff happens. So I really want to get back into it. I have recently taken to a semi-big tournament down Colorado, and this did get 4th place. So if you guys want to check it out, there will be a link in the description for you to check it out. And once again, just watch videos, like videos, the same old things. And yeah, thank you all for watching. You have a good day.